Okay, today I'm going to throw what I like to call a hollow jar. And inside of a hollow jar are three major technical things we're going to learn. One is how to throw into a form, and two, how to seal a form, and three, how to turn it into a jar. So it's kind of a lidless pot as well. So I'm going to start by actually getting this ball of clay ready, and I've decided to throw kind of a larger ball of clay, so I have a larger jar. And so one way to start by centering is by getting your hands, start slap centering that. And that's going to help get that more in the center. Okay, so obviously with any form you got to start by centering the clay. If the clay is a little stiff, or if it's a little bit extra clay for you, you can make a fist like that with a sponge in there. Cock your arm like that, and pull towards you as you come up, and I call putting that in park. And that just generally kind of mellows that clay out. Push that right down. Hollow jars can be all kinds of forms. They can be, that's kind of a pear-shaped one that I just threw over there. You can do cylindrical ones, egg-shaped ones, round ones, straight-walled ones, all kinds of things. So I'll throw a little bit of a different form, one that's got a little bit more of a straighter form to it and a flatter top. You gotta get this open. Sometimes I'll drive my thumb in there along with my finger to get that. I'm opening it quite tall because I'm going to make this a taller form. I'm going to open that out. Make sure there's no drag, get that water in there, a little bit deeper, pull that opening wide. With a cylinder, you got to make sure, again, you've got a corner. You're making the floor of the pot first before you start pulling the walls out. And we're going to do a hollow jar in two stages. You're going to pull all the clay up, I call it pulling it into place, so it's up and into the form. And second of all, and then we're going to close the top, and that I always do second. So I'm just compressing that floor, making it nice and tight. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and pull this guy straight up. Right about here, I'm 2/3 of the way up. I'm going to stop moving my inside hand, and I'm going to roll my outside hand over the top. And watch what happens to the clay. See, the clay is going to start heading inwards. And it's important that if you're going to seal up a pot, that you leave that clay heading inwards. I'm not going to go all the way in yet because I've still got to pull more clay from the bottom. And then when you want to get water in that wall, I'm going to cup my hands, I'm going to squeeze water right on my wrist, and the water is going to travel down my hand right to where I want that water. So now we're going to pull a little bit more height. I'm going to narrow that bottom, tuck it in a little bit, get some of that clay, and lift. Again, I'll stop right there. I'm leaving a little extra thick at the top because I'm leaving reserve so that I can make that closure. Okay. Every now and then, also a good idea to take this tool. This is a potter's pick. I'm going to come in and I'm going to compress that. You can also do a pull with that. See, I'm actually pulling the clay while compressing the clay with this tool. Makes it nice and clean. Makes it nice and strong. Okay. You can subtract clay by driving it down too, like this. It's another thing you can do. And one other thing that's really important is I'm looking also while I throw this, I'm looking at the silhouette of the pot because it's easy with a tall piece to get kind of a lumpy or irregular looking pot. And so I really want to make sure that line is good and clean. So I'm going to do one more pull. Okay. And dig at the bottom, kind of cut my finger inside. And I want to have minimal contact. I really don't want to be touching very much. Now I'm watching for this little twist you see forming right there. As soon as I see that, I want to handle that right away. I want to kind of compress that out of there. So that's what I'm looking for. Okay. And that clay is starting to get kind of thin, so that's where and had a little ripple form in the bottom. Don't let flaws or mistakes show up and make you panic at all. I mean, they're all very mendable. So something like this, I'm coming and I'm just compressing and I'm just working this little section. Now the other thing that's happening is my arm up here is starting to drag on the rim, and that's going to cause twists. So I'm going to get that arm wet so that my arm doesn't really cause it to drag or twist at all. And I'm going to just gently now, I'm not pulling anymore, I'm just mending. Getting that nice and compressed and clean. come in with this tool back and forth between the sponge. Stiffer clay tends to twist easier. Porcelain does. This porcelain's really, really thin, very delicate. It stretches really well, but it doesn't have a lot of tensile strength. So yeah, I'm looking at that line and I like how that's tapering up a little bit. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to push this out just a hair right here to make that form look like it's consistently tapering. And see how clean that's coming? And come out like this. Alright, so I'm about done with the body. Now I've got to do my closing move up top here. So before you start doing that, you want to make sure you have no water left inside. Because if you leave water inside, you're in trouble. You're going to have cracking. You're going to have a hole in the bottom of your pot. So I get that all wiped out. Okay. Now, to close this, I need to, I'm sticking this hand in like this, and it's going to go right down about this far, that line I'm drawing. And then while it's sitting there, I'm pushing the other hand and I'm rolling the knuckles. See, the knuckles are rolling like this. That's really important because that's going to help me close that form. Take a little extra clay that's going to come off, that's fine. So you'll see inside that there's, pretty much it's pretty dry, so I'm going to reach that hand in again and I'm using tips of fingers. People make a mistake by putting too much contact. You don't want to do that because if you have too much contact, you're going to get a lot of twist. So see how I'm driving that in. Now I'm going to get this wet. I'll make another move. A second move is to have your hands on either side. You're not cupping like that. You're just touching like this. And watch this index finger. I call it looking down the well. That index finger is going to rise up and lean over and look down inside the pot like that. So that's sending my clay inward, which is what I want it to do. If you don't do that, trying to close up a pot's going to be really, really tricky. So I'm pushing in with this index finger. And then what I might do is at the very end, I might lift it up. So watch how that pot's going to have almost like a little neck on it. Okay? So when I'm feeling right from here, from this little point up, it's extra thick compared to that. And that's good again because I need clay. If it's really thin, you'll never get it closed. So I'm gonna gently urge that in and I'm gonna roll that index finger up and over the top again. What I gotta watch out for, and I'm gonna check, is how it's looking down here, because if I put too much torque here, it's gonna twist and get really nasty down below. And once we do that again, I'm pushing some more. This particular batch of clay feels a little dry to me and stiff, so it's not changing shape as easily, which is okay. That's not a problem. So that's where what I can do is just by slowly compressing that clay and lifting that up. See how, and you might even stop if you're making a vase. That's kind of a classical vase form. So this is the part that seems really fussy. People, they rush this part, but sometimes this can take about as long as getting all the clay up into its vertical shape, because you don't want to rush this part. You want to be really delicate. See how I'm going right up and over my hand, and that circle is going to keep closing and closing and closing. Now, if you notice, I've only got enough room to put like 2 or 3 fingers in there. So we're getting there. We're still slowly but surely closing that. Now, what I have to decide at this point as I'm getting this form closed is what kind of lid am I going to put on this? Because what I will be doing is I'll be cutting out a lid like a puzzle piece. But am I going to have a knob on the top? Am I going to have it just come to a close? Am I going to attach a sculptural knob? That's where the composition aspect of this starts coming in. So I'm going to kind of come in lower because I'm going to actually have a knob on this thing. And again, you can see this is where I call this the shoulder, right there where I'm going in at a more stern angle. See how it kind of just suddenly shifts? And this is all going to collapse together into a knob. So one more time, I'm going to roll that over. You see, we're almost closed now. We're getting real close. Now I'm going to drive that in and lift that up as I do it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm still 1 or 2 moves away from being completely finished. I'm just checking the wall of the pot. making sure I've got a good line. Refinement is something that a lot of students skip. They get the thing done and they go, okay, good, I'm good to go. And when I walk over them, if I see this tool completely clean, that means they haven't really refined at all. Because this really is the best tool for refining because it takes all the extra goop off there. So now that I've got this pretty much right where I want it, and I'm barely touching it. It's like a little fly lands on it. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and get this wet. And I'm going to add a little bit of shape to this. I'm going to come in. Okay, so now you can see that, I'm kind of trying to add a little bit of elegance to this piece, whereas that kind of stumpy little knob was a little bit. So I'm going to take just the side of my finger and I'm touching it really lightly. I may take the pinky here. And I don't use a lot of different tools. I use a lot of the same ones. My pinky is one of my favorite tools to use because it's so delicate. And see, and pressure is really important. You just add pressure slowly. You don't just jam your finger in there. You got to touch it, and then you got to increase the pressure and see how the clay responds. A good thing to practice this stage is to take a little tiny ball of clay and make a pot out of it. Then you have to learn how to be really delicate. So I'm going to come in a little bit more narrow. Ball of my finger. This hand is just steady. I'm not adding any pressure. I mean, I'm like a fly's landing on this thing. Then I'm going to come in, I'm going to put a little sharp line right there. Okay. And sometimes it's kind of neat to add a little bit of ornamentation. So maybe I'll put a little line right there. It's just gentle pressure, and I'm going to go. And if that doesn't come off clean, that one didn't come off terribly clean, just kind of clean that up. And then you might even just be. Okay, so, and see how this rib is flexible and it bends to the shape. And people often complain they're worried about this tool because it's sharp and it might catch the clay and it might like scratch it or carve into it. You just got to kind of, again, you touch it really gently and you're working it down real slow like this. Okay, and you see, look how clean that is. Porcelain's going to even be cleaner. You can see a lot of the grit from the stoneware. Now the lid's probably going to be cut right around here because you see that angle. That's where you want to make your lid. And when you do the lid, I can't cut it now because it's wet. What I like to do is I like to hold that rib and I have this arch and I'll trim right along an arch here, maybe one here, one there. So I've got this 3-arched lid and then that pops off, it puzzle pieces on. If you do it on the side, a vertical side, it's easier to slip and slide. And if you do just a single circle, that lid will never stay on there. That's going to fall off. So you always want to have some kind of a like a puzzle piece notch or something cut into it so that it's going to help hold. If you notice that when you're using this tool you create little lines, that means you got like a little impurity on that tool. So I'm going to keep going down, and right about here is where I'm going to stop that. And now I'll finish off by grinding out a little bit of that form because I want a nice narrow bottom. You see, I'm driving with what I call the toe of the tool, leading with the toe, and I'm going in nice and easy, taking it easy. I'm making sure I don't, like I said, I left a little extra in the bottom so that there would be support while I'm throwing. And there's support for the pot while I'm throwing, but now I don't need that support anymore because I'm done with all my movement up top. Now I'm narrowing that. And of course the question everyone always asks, well, how far do you know to narrow? And that's a tricky one. I mean, I just know my throwing now, so I'm able to gauge. But one thing you can do is you can tap it with your hand. I'll show you that in just a second. Especially if the pot's open, you can stick a needle in the side, check your depth. Or if you can't see inside like this, you can tap it, put your ear next to it, and you can kind of hear how thick it is. So at the end of it all, the most important thing you want to do is, if you're going to dry your pot, go ahead and leave the wheel turning, because you may have dry climate, you have a wet climate, but you want it drying evenly. You could put a fan on it if you wanted to, but one of the most important things is you want to slide that pedal underneath the wheel. That way you avoid tripping over it or actually, accelerating too much. Let it dry out. Make sure it's wired off, and when it's ready to move, you can pop it off the bat.